Hello there, Rabbi on the Mountain. I see by the fiery presence above that it's time for another in our series on the Ten Commandments. What is going on with those guys? And this is one of the big ones. Number two, thou shalt have no other gods before me.
And it sounds a little bit like no idol worship. And so one of the reasons we have Catholic, Protestant, Jewish Ten Commandments is the Catholics and the Protestants tried to get rid of duplication and combine some. In Judaism, the counting was God spoke, that's a commandment, even though they may sound similar. So we don't want to lose track of or get distracted by having three different lists, because certainly we can tease out 14 or 15, and there's a little duplication. But let's get to our commandment. Only one God worthy of worship. You know, Joe, shut off the TV, turn off the social media, because there's a fine line between being entertained and turning objects and politicians into gods. And that's not the same as idol worship.
And don't forget LeBron James. He gets in there too.
We can always throw in sports figures, which are always on that line. It's okay to follow, it's okay to be a fan, but don't become a fanatic, because then you're worshiping something, not an object, not an idol. You've now elevated someone to the position of God.
Well, we do that all the time. In fact, that's practically the definition of advertising and marketing is to get people to look at your product as something that's essential and that you can't live without.
And I think there's your line, Joe, is when we elevate LeBron James or the Yankees to this position of being a god, and we don't realize it, we're hurting ourselves and our family.
And not to mention all the people who in Boston who just raised an eyebrow when you mentioned the Yankees. Sports, just to dwell on that a little bit. So it's okay to have a Super Bowl party, to have friends over, to have two sets of teams and you root for your own team and like it, and it becomes fun. But
Yes.
it crosses the line when you go out after the game and look for somebody from Philadelphia to beat up.
And I think that applies in politics as well. And we have people that are supporting one presidential candidate or the other without thinking, and the statements they make are patently absurd. And that again is you're elevating that politician to the position of a god and not a representative that we want to see leading our country.
So, how do we control that impulse in all of us? Because we can't control what the candidates say. And I find when I try and disagree with anyone, whatever the candidate we're talking about it is, I get the dirty look, the you're wrong, the shouting, the anger. When I said, well, why can't we just discuss? And because this is, after all, something worthy of discussion, not opposition.
The difficulty lies in self-control, and that's all the Ten Commandments. There are no Ten Commandment police out there, in spite of what some Republican politicians think about putting them up in schools. It's not going to change behavior and it's not going to do anything. It's just silly. Rather, it's up to us as individuals. And that is where the difficulty lies, is when I start becoming fanatical about a political candidate and call you stupid or ignorant, I have to stop myself and say, wait a minute. What does that say about my belief about that candidate? I've now elevated that candidate to God, and they're going to cure all our problems. Elect this person president, and we're not going to have any more inflation. We're not going to have any more price gouging. We're not going to have any more problems with immigrants or jobs or anything else. And you have to stop and go, only God can make everything go away and stop. It'll take cooperation and the middle way. and listening to each other and compromise and doing something that makes sense, that's workable, that's going to solve these problems. But then I have to control myself, Joe, and therein lies the rub.
Well, I don't have to control myself when it comes to you, Rabbi. I always appreciate your wisdom. Thank you as always.
Just everyone out there watching and listening, the 10 Commandments are there for all of us to read. Take a look and use them as a checklist for your own behavior.